Welcome to this week's edition of Mtn Outhouse News. I'm your host, Jam. This is the craziest to happen in running this week. This week's stories include Xavier the Rockstar, the oldest to complete a 100-miler, and the Doha World Champs debacle. Literally, as I was scripting this week's show, this popped into my Instagram feed. It looks like Xavier Thevenard is in a rock band and no one told us. This was actually a throwback to the day before the 2015 UTMB, and Xavier and his brother are slaying some tunes on a stage in Chamonix. Crazy. It was at the Berlin Marathon 1 year ago, Eliud Kipchoge ran a new world record in 2:01:39. His record was really in another class until this year's Berlin. Current world record holder in the 5,000 and 10,000 meter, Kenenisa Bekele out of Ethiopia, hasn't really been able to translate his success at shorter distances into the marathon distance lately. In fact, his last good marathon was way back in 2016 at Berlin with a 2:03:03 win. He had to step up his game this year in his pursuit to own the elusive marathon world record, and in come-from-behind fashion, came really close. He surged from behind to take the win in 2:01:41, just 2 seconds off Kipchoge's current world record. Moving on to some ultra content via the Ultralist. Y'all ever heard of it? The email listserv runs out of the Dartmouth College with all sorts of ultra-related discussions. A recent one to hit inboxes is a US and world ranking of age 70 and up 100-mile runners. This list is periodically updated by ultra historian Nick Marshall, and the latest dropped just a few days ago. So how fast are those 70 and older running 100-mile races? We have a new queen stepping up to this age category in Sandra Brown, the most prolific 100-mile finisher of all time, with over 200, setting some fast marks. She completed 100 in 22:31, and then 10 weeks later dropped it to 21:15. How about the oldest to ever complete 100 miles? That appears to be Don Jans of Florida, according to Nick. This year at A Race for the Ages, at age 87, he completed 100 miles in 72:44:05. Next on to the U.S. Mountain Running Champs, held in Waterville Valley Mountain Race, New Hampshire, on a 7-mile course, where the top 4 women and men nabbed spots at the upcoming World Champs in Argentina in November. It was a very typical mountain champs race with Joe Gray and Andy Wacker battling it out up front. Joe took the W here in 52:51 over Wacker, and third place Seth D'Amour. Also qualifying was David Sinclair. On the ladies' side, Grayson Murphy, who has been transitioning more to the trails lately, was the big winner in 1:01:45 over Cassie Enman second. Third was Kimber Maddox, and rounding out the top 4 was Samantha Lewis in 1:08:32. Checking back in on the Spartathlon, Greece's most famous ultra, it wasn't the year for the bidders, as both Nicole and Zach dropped out. Top Americans were Rolf Schmidt in 31:31, followed closely by Marissa Lysak in 31:35. Your winners were Bodis Tamas of Hungary in 23:29, not all that fast of a winning time, and Zuzana Marez of Hungary in 27:16 for the women. Thanks to viewer Timothy Nooney for this next story of the Adamello 170K, which is a super tough race in Italy. Sean Van Horn, an American, placed third over there in what is reportedly his first 100. Way to go. Over to the Beast Coast in Virginia's Yeti 100, it appears Jasmine Charamonte of Pennsylvania was the first place woman in 18:39:24, setting a new course record by 2 minutes, while Lance Doherty of Boston was the men's champ in 16:11, which was the third fastest all time. Ever wanted to run from Utah to Idaho in the same race? Well, you can do just that at the Bear 100, and then he did last weekend. Jeff Browning continued his 100-mile winning ways with a 19:06 victory, followed up by Trevor Fuchs in 19:34. For the women, Katie Asmuth was the victor in 23:23. The Grand to Grand annual stage race from Grand Canyon to Grand Staircase Escalante took place this past week. I mainly heard about this one through Sarah Lavender Smith, who crushed it this year, winning the women's race and placing 10th overall in a field of 78 finishers. The stage race covers 171 miles in 7 days. Joseph Taylor was the overall winner in 34:16, while Sarah's time was 45:34 combined. Did you catch any of the World Championships this past week? Well, it was quite a debacle, with some calling it the Doha disaster. After extreme heat and virtually zero crowds have likely made this the most embarrassing track and field and running champs event ever put forth by the IAAF. Yes, the world's best runners traveled to Qatar to participate in the Olympic equivalent of running in a non-Olympic year, greeted by scattered fans and basically an empty stadium. On top of that, events like the marathon were just a total show. Despite starting at midnight, the high heat still took a massive toll. Take these stats from Steve Magnus on Twitter. 41% of the field dropped, 89 degrees with 75% humidity, just 4 teams had all 3 women finish, and only 13 ran faster than the US Olympic standard for the marathon. Seems like many are calling this a cash grab by the IAAF, and not something where the athletes' best interests are being put first here. Karl Meltzer hinted on Twitter this week he may be considering the Moab 240, the most winningest 100-mile runner of all time, and the man that often says 100 miles isn't that far, from what I can tell hasn't yet run a 200-plus mile race. This could be interesting to see if he actually thinks this is pretty far. And we conclude this week's show with a couple of tough stories. First is a death on the Incline in Manitou Springs. The popular hiking spot, infamous for its railroad tie stair steps, had a man pass away this week of a heart attack, which closed the spot for several hours. And next we have another tragic story, this one coming out of the Flat Rock 50K in Kansas, where 33-year-old trail runner Thomas Stanley passed away after being struck by lightning near the finish of the event. Thomas ran his first 100-miler at age 26 at the Heartland 100, placing 11th, and repeated that same feat the next year, running an hour faster with a finish in 20 hours 6 minutes. He's since run quite a few more trail races and ultras in Kansas, where he lived, all while raising a family of 3 children with his wife Ashley. If you'd like to help out the Stanleys, there is a link to a GoFundMe below. And with that, thanks for tuning in to episode 165 of Outhouse News. The show would not be possible without the support of our Patreon contributors, who help with the production of this show each and every week. Join the Patreon crew at the link below for as little as $2 per month. Huge shout out to our $50 level supporters: Squirrel's Nut Butter, Brian Sands, Base Medical Ultramarathon Medical Care Online Course, Ultra Trailblazers, Sean Trujillo, and the Twisted Fork Ultra out of Park City, as well as our $25 level supporters: Bluebird Running Company, Josh Goldstein, Carrie Savage, Renee Feint, Casey Carter, and Jeff Holbrook. Thanks for checking out the show, and we'll see you next time. If you have crazy stories to share or a question or feedback for the show, please leave a comment below. And finally, if you'd like to own this custom pair of Jam Jam sunglasses, complete with a signed certificate of authenticity, check out the link in the description. Have a shitty week.